Welcome to Minor Rex, a podcast coming out of Des Plaines Public Library. I am Dave. I'm here with Joel and Tony, and we're here to talk about The Man in the High Castle. Originally a book by Philip K. Dick. We'll talk more about the show, though, which is on Amazon Prime. It's about an alternate history where the Allies lost the war, World War II, and the Japanese and the Germans have invaded America, and what life is like in an alternate history America. It's finishing its third season right about now, but we watched a varying amount of episodes from the first and second seasons. We've also read a little bit of the book. So, guys, what do you think of The Man in the High Castle?
I watched the whole first season, and I'm starting the second, and I don't know if I avoided the show on purpose, because I'm usually a sci-fi fan, but I'm happy I watched it. I think it's a very well-made show, and I am not, like, jumping in excitement over it, and I think that's part of because the show it just takes so long for anything to, there's really a lot of good storytelling, minimal payoff, but just good, you're really getting invested with characters and with the plot, and you don't always get answers. And I think that's one of the great things that Philip K. Dick maybe does with this type of storytelling, and the show also kind of does. It's very zoomed in and very developed also, like the aesthetics of the show and the world being in like the, is it early 60s or late 50s?
62,
thanks, yeah. And it just does a good job in a lot of ways. But I think the things that scare me about the show are just like, you know, this is it's like very overt fascism, it's a scary world. And they definitely hit on those notes right away. And they hit on some of the things I don't like seeing in films, but, you know, in some ways you have to see them and, you know, especially to tell this story. So it's very impactful right away, but then I think does a good job of also carrying the story forward without using that gratuitous either violence or emotional or psychological, you know, horror or anything like that for like cheap tension or anything. I think it uses tension in a very good way. And so for those reasons, I think it's actually a really, really well made and fun series actually. So I plan to keep watching it all the way through.
I had it's kind of like a whiplash. When I say whiplash, it connotates, you know, high peaks and low valleys. It's more of a modulated, kind of rounded Appalachian-style hills and shallower valleys, but it is just a steady stream of, for me, it was the character development and the emotion felt during viewing. It's very well acted, very well pieced together, very well written, but I think that it's so large, what they're trying to say, that, as you mentioned, Tony, is very zoomed in, and they try to bring it out incrementally, but sometimes it just causes a little bit of a whiplash where it's like such a large concept focused on this one individual. And but there are some very large concepts involved of the wrestling of what happened, you know, how could this have happened? Could this happen to us? Kind of thing. I watched seasons 1, 2, and 3, and there are some definite parts of excitement, and I can't, like, you finally get the reveal of this particular situation, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be, you know, I can't believe, again, very small things meaning so much. But at other parts, you're like, oh, are we back here again? Are we doing this? So there's some kind of, not lollygagging, but just kind of slower paced and faster paced. And now we're back to something I'm interested in. So it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But fascination with the integration of Nazism into American culture and how people are, you know, a full-blooded American will click their heels and raise their right arm. And it's just very sickening. But that's part of the show. It's part of the gut punch, you know, the body blows that keep on coming at you throughout watching this.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of contradiction involved with John Smith. You know, he's a Nazi at the German title, Obergruppenführer, and it's very much a gut punch when you realize that he has this relationship with his son where he's mentoring his son, teaching his son to be hard and to be brutal. And in the first season, spoiler alert, he runs into the brick wall of, well, your son actually has a terminal illness that is going to slowly, you know,
well, it's an illness that will make him terminal.
It'll make him terminal because that's how that is treated within the Nazi regime, and so it's it's so interesting that you're like, oh, now I'm actually concerned with what's going to happen. That's like a really interesting wrinkle in this character because now it adds that level, that layer that you don't really want to be questioning, you know, whether or not it's like, well, of course there's humanity to this person. He's a person, but now he's having to test his own self against his own ideology and
structure.
That structure, yeah. And so that's one of the more interesting things, because you could say that that's all the characters in this is like, they're like, am I even in the right? Or given the out, which is the film, like the idea, even the very idea that there's a world that's different than this, that has different structures and different values, it gives them that liberation to actually risk the thought that, yeah, maybe I should fight for something else or fight against this. And that's why I think it's really good, because I think there's the ones who are fighting an obvious fight, and then there's the ones who are like resisting from within in large ways, and which, as is in the first season. I don't know. I think it's probably going to develop that way right now. But things are always changing, and I think that's part of the philosophy is that of the overall system here is that someone's place even in this world is changing and shifting based on what they know and where they are and what they can do with what they have. I think Frank Fink is a fascinating character. Frank. Thank you. Sorry. Yep. I think it was somewhere that his name is changed, and I read that in the book or something.
Right, and that's part of the story, the plot point.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a great. He's a machinist that is able, in the world of the series, he's able to like counterfeit and machine work, and he's exceptional at it. The great conflict in the first season is that like there's also a world out there that might value art, and doing things not just for their monetary value or for their machine worth of things. And so, I don't know, that's a really interesting thing that's actually pretty thoroughly explored in all these really small ways throughout the plot, if you're looking for it, if that's what you're interested. But then again, you could just consider this being like slow filler, like what's going on, what's going to happen. They have to make money, okay.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's definitely not water cooler conversation, but for me, I always call them teeth brushing moments, where you're brushing your teeth and you realize you just kind of stop because you're thinking of what you saw like the night before or just recently, and the huge idea involved and what that might mean to life as we live it today, not to some alternate universe out there. And that's what I always like. PKD is always looking at moments where he can bring in that Philip K. Dick, where he can bring in that moment of truth from some weird, outrageous landscape and crash it into your life. That's what I find fascinating about Man in the High Castle and Dick's writing overall.
And if we're going to talk about, Philip K. Dick's writing, this follows suit where it's like an absurd landscape, but a very human character or characters, and how they endure the landscape or the situation or the environment, whatever you want to call it. And so that's kind of fascinating, because this is kind of like, it seems like this is going to be like a war movie. There's going to be a lot of battles. There's going to be a lot of this and that. But it's not about, Philip K. Dick is not about that as much as it's about how does one person survive and how do they cope with the environment, whether it's Man in the High Castle or any one of his, many other books. That's the theme. And kind of what keeps bringing me back is, this character in this book. And thinking about, I'll just, get a shock of that one moment and be like, oh yeah, that was pretty terrible. How did they endure that? Or would I be able to endure that? Or do I know someone who has endured situations like this in the real world, as opposed to these sometimes absurd landscapes?
Yeah, I have that vision of Rick Decker from Blade Runner thumbing through his pocket guide of how much artificial pets are worth. Yeah. Some bizarre, crazy situation like that, but you understand why he's doing that, and I myself have felt the emotion of why he's doing that in the past, and makes it accessible. So you're right. That's just what popped in my head when you said that.
Yeah. Yeah, the show is, for me, it's a little slow and it's a little quiet. There's a lot of whispering, because that's the nature of the thing. The resistance, and there's a lot of hesitation between characters to trust each other, and that just makes for a slow show, I think. But I agree with both of your points that it's very well written and very well acted. I think those are strong pros in favor of the show. But I don't know. I was also watching it on a plane on my phone, so I was a little uncomfortable. Maybe I didn't give it a good shot.
There's a strong theme of pursuit, I guess, for lack of a better word. Like Juliana Crane's character stops at nothing and continuously stops at nothing. She just battles, like her character is always active and thinking ahead and moving and making decisions based on her pursuit of what she's trying to find out, even like no matter how unpopular it might be. And again, that's another very interesting aspect of the show, where she comes up to these impossible situations and she doesn't necessarily overcome. Well, she does overcome them, but she kind of carves her own way through. So if you enjoy watching, again, it's not the most active, as we said, but it's a slow cooker type of phenomenon where it may require some patience, but you'll be happy you place that patience into it. And the character of Open Group Führer John Smith, as Tony mentioned, Rufus Sewell, is one of the best acting performances I've seen in a show in a long time. You even forgot he was an actor playing a role sometimes. He was he just took it away.
Yeah.
So, and also the Inspector Keto and the whole Japanese element of the Pacific States of America, the Nobusuke, Mr. Tagomi, incredible portrayal of when you talk about alternate universes. I think this is where it came into first with the Japanese, where was it in season 1 where he discovers that this isn't the only reality. And to me that was just an amazing structural point, because it provided so much more depth to that character.
Yeah. And especially, I don't know if his story is told in a lot of long, quiet shots, like shots meditating, shots gardening, and like little casual conversations with his aides. And he's like one of the few warm, generous, like kind people in that world. And it's like, well, how do you get to be a trade minister of, as being that generous and kind? And I think another instance of like a world he doesn't want to like endorse and put a stamp on this. He doesn't want to like agree with the other seats of power in that government, thinking that war is inevitable. He doesn't want to believe all of that. And I think the perception and the portrayal of that other world, I think, was like through a deep meditative thing. But I think he also sees the value of it because he lost someone, I think, is central to that character. And that must often, be a thing like, well, what if only, And so he can kind of ponder those things and acknowledge that maybe that's somewhere else, someone else is living that or something,
In the novel, everybody reads, there's this book out called The Grasshopper Lies Heavy, and people are reading this, and it has different truths as different scenarios that strike people in different ways. And in one version, the Allies win the war in this way, and another version of the book, they win in another way. And in the show, the alternate universes are told through films. And I found it fascinating whenever they would show a person would realize the alternate universe aspect of this with the film. They would show the first shot would be of the person watching the film, and the wonder and the awe and the confusion of understanding that this is both real, but it's not from this reality.
Right.
And I just thought that was an interesting aspect that they took of filming it. The other thing, back to Mr. Tagomi, he mentioned the I Ching and the faith that a few of the characters place in this ancient Taoist philosophy. And in the book, so much more. In fact, there's a question of whether the book Man in the High Castle was written by decisions with the I Ching.
Sure.
And but in the series, Mr. Tagomi says fate is fluid. Destiny lies in the hands of men. So no matter, whatever the dependence on this ancient tradition, it's our actions today that decide, what the future fate will be. And I think that's a theme that's played out throughout. It's down to our choices, not what's foreordained.
Yeah, there's a lot of consequences for your actions in this show, and often severe, sometimes fatal. Siding with the resistance is one thing. You're taking your life in your hands, but, what about your family members and your friends and anyone you've ever talked to, your neighbors in your building? Are you putting them at risk? And so, like, one seemingly small decision by a character may have huge repercussions maybe for that character, maybe not for that character, but maybe for other characters, either in the moment or down the road. So it's kind of fascinating to see how interrelated these characters are, how dependent they are on each other to, do any number of things, either keep secrets or toe the line or take risks. Sometimes you have to take risks to save the other person. It's a fascinating show for sure. It is like in Game of Thrones, for example, deaths are kind of a little bit weighty, but sometimes a little bit funny. Whereas in this show, like it's serious and it's shocking and it's awful, like every time. Game of Thrones, like people are taking bets on, who's going to die in the new season? But in this show, like no one wants to take bets. No one.
And
there's no levity at all with the lives of these characters.
Sickening realization when you realize, and they're good about giving you a warning, really, of what's coming down the pike. But one death scene in particular that was truly shocking, and for as much as we're talking about slowness, that happened so quickly that I was pretty amazed, and I had to rewind it to make sure I saw it correctly. But anyway, I agree with that too. It's
a weighty show. It's a serious show, and like that is expressed by the writing and the pacing and the acting.
The intro
for sure.
Yeah, it's a haunting intro.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it brings your excitement level down, and you have to sit quietly and wait for the show to come to you with that 60-second performance.
I think it's interesting that this is a sci-fi writer, but it's a historical fiction, really, with elements of there's a lot of things to like I mentioned, like the aesthetic earlier, but like the neutral zone is one of those things that you can it's such a unique and novel concept, but it's also like the Wild West meets post-apocalyptic 1950s America, and the characters out there also have a different mentality about not even just the core characters, but I think the supporting characters, side characters, are even different when they're not like in the Pacific states. And I think that the whole picture is just really, I think that aspect is one of the things, like the way that you can, it's one of like the anachronisms, I guess, are one of the things that helped you like stay engaged with the show when it's not the most exciting minute to minute, like the Victory Day celebrations, the fact that it was, apple pie for dessert was just really haunting and weird. And there's just a lot of those.
It would lull you and then shock you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The details of this show are a huge reason to watch it because it does, like I said before, it's a lot of body blows. But to me, I'm always a sucker for what could have happened.
Sure.
And that there's even, when they talk about jet propulsion from, you can reach, New York to,
San Francisco, was it? Yeah.
Right. And in the book, they're talking about Scandinavia to San Francisco in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
Just imagine. So, just the capabilities, and you're talking about Nazi Germany already populating Mars in 1962, and just what would be different.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of content there with the side characters. I just have a note just for like Childan, the Collector, was kind of another flawed character that you're like, you don't necessarily have that much love for because he's a product of this kind of twisted, warped mentality, and he's very racist, and he's even like offending like the collectors when he's talking to them. So I think that character is interesting. They keep him around, but he's very, I think, different in the books. And I think one of the cool things about the book is that it uses the same symbols, lists the same particulars, but then jumbles them up and puts them in different places. Like the symbol of a gun is still there, but it's not used as a plot point in the same way.
Right.
Where it might be the gun that assassinated. Again, there's a lot of spoilers in this, but I'm also like, what else can I give away in a 30-minute podcast? That's one of the more interesting things I think about reading the book is that why are these for any other reason than like did they just like put a bunch of cards out and then like re-scramble the plot to make the show, because it seems like they're using almost all of the symbols that are in the
Right.
book, or like a
I
lot
agree.
of them. So
Yeah, the piece of jewelry in the book, towards the end, there's a very important piece of jewelry, but the series puts it at the beginning and causes a lot of symbolism. And that piece of jewelry passes through hands of many different characters to come back to and have meaning for a particular character. And that was just amazing to me. I completely agree with your statement. They like condensed it down to just a few ideas and said, okay, we're going to write it, but make sure
to include all of these,
we need this, this, and this, and this, and we need to connect these. And I believe Frank Spotnitz is one of those everything, like producer, writer. He was very heavily involved with the X-Files, too. That doesn't have any bearing. I just wanted to mention that. For all the X-Files fans, this is what Frank is Frank Spotnitz is doing.
Yeah.
It doesn't require reading the book to watch the series, and you can also read the book after watching the series, if you care to. We will be reading the book here at the library for
October
a book
10th?
discussion on October 10th. Possibly subject to change, but I think that's what it is, October 10th. And so you can read it, and it'll be held here at the library.
Yeah, have your own discussion about the symbolism and weight and heaviness of the man in the high castle. All right, well, that's going to do it for us. If you want to watch the show, it's on Amazon Prime. Unfortunately, we don't have it at the library. It's not out on DVD yet. We're sorry about that. But if you want to read the book, we've got it here along with lots of Philip K. Dick. Maybe this will be the first book that gets you into his body of work. But in the meantime, that was Minor Rex. We'll see you next time.